Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the replay. We're going to talk about going deep to improve your memory power. And that involves this simple formula, the D.E.E.P formula. And it's a really wonderful and powerful process if you can do this. And it's really the core of all memory training. Now, if you're watching this live replay, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed to this channel, get subscribed so that the bell icon goes on for you so that you're notified when we do these live streams. And that's just the way that the technology works. And as everybody's showing up, hello, thank you for being here. Hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. As we're showing up, we do a little bit of throat clearing and so forth because this is live, but the replays are valuable and we'll go through this for you so that you're able to improve your memory power. And we just really enjoy these sessions when people show up, when they engage, you get the most out of it. It's really the time for you to do some learning, some strategy thinking, some practical tips for improving your memory. And these things work the best the more active you are. But if you are on the replay, then leave your comments down below and let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, live or replay. Doesn't matter. We're going to go through this deep strategy for improving your memory power. So thanks everybody who's here now. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what memory power means to you and what you would like from your memory. How would you like to see your memory improved? Rachid's here. Emerson's here. Thanks for saying hello. Emerson says, listening while I am cleaning, also obsessed with memorizing poetry, pretty much given up on French, waiting for the spark to return. You know, that's a good thing that you mentioned that. The spark sometimes does fade in language learning. Now, poetry, of course, you can go to, and you're well served in going to it, and that's part of staying deep. But imagine that some of that poetry was French poetry, or maybe it's French lyrics to a French song, for example. That'll keep you in the water, so to speak, even if you don't feel like going deep with a daily French learning ritual. Anyway, I hope that gives you a little bit of a tip, but also you can go deep into any kind of poetry because every memory discipline that you work on helps serve every other. And taking a break is normal, it's natural, it's good, you know? Taking a break is natural, taking a break is good. Not everybody does it, but everybody should. So Rachid asks, what does deep refer to? Well, that's what we're going to talk about on this live session. We're going to go through it piece by piece. And if you're joining us now, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world and what memory power means to you so that we can really make the most out of this session. And I like this little low-tech thing here, but we're going to fill in everything as we go along. And deep is a very powerful formula if you put it to work in your life. And what does it mean to be deep? Well, it means to have something as an integral part of your life so that you're training and you're getting the benefits, and then training is no longer so much training as such. It's just a thing that you do in life, like going to the gym. When I go to the gym, I don't think, well, I'm training. Now I'm just part of my life. I actually long for it when I don't go, just as I long for memory exercise. So Rachid says, memory power means to me better, faster learning. Excellent. So better, faster learning. Monkey D is here. And Monkey D says, from Algeria, medical student, the most I think I like about you is that you love what you're doing. God bless you. Well, thanks for noticing that, Monkey D. I do love this, actually. And I love it because it helps people get genuine, real results, especially when there's so much junk out there. I don't know why every memory trainer isn't out there doing these live sessions to interact with you. I just don't know. I mean, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't love that aspect of it. I know that some of them do love it the way that they do it. But I love this in particular. I love hearing from you. The more active you are, the better these live sessions are, both for the replays and for the actual session itself. So keep letting me know where you are in the world and what memory means to you. So we got a definition from Rachid, which is a very, very good one, very useful one. And we had from Emerson's a sense of a bit of a learning stage, a plateau maybe, and the idea of taking a break. And part of memory power would be making sure the break isn't too long, but then thinking also, how could we still take a break, but keep on the road, keep on the path, keep on moving. And one of the reasons why we want to keep on the path and keep on moving is because of a principle called memory reserve. So we know that as we continue to learn something, we're building up our reserve on that topic. And that's why taking a break can be quite risky, both in the sense that sometimes we take a break and we never come back to something, but it's also risky in the sense that we stop building a reserve. So What does this reserve mean? Well, it's like, imagine sediment in a river, and how the water is pushing over time and it's building up this sediment that later over time forms into hard clay, which later in time forms into rock. I mean, that's geological time, which is very, very long periods of time. But in life, in a year, for example, continuous exposure to a topic builds up reserve that's very much like that, distributed throughout the neural networks of the brain. And the more consistent exposure you give yourself, the more you build up this reserve or this sediment. It turns out this is very healthy to do for the health of your brain, for life. And so I've got some podcasts coming out about bilingualism, why bilingual people tend, at least in the research that we see on paper, why they tend to have fewer incidents of Alzheimer's and dementia, and why learning languages is one of the best ways to help fend off the incidence of those disease. And if you get anything like that, reduces the severity, right? We don't know that much about it, but we do know that memory reserve is part of it. So the more that you're studying consistently throughout your life, and ideally more than one topic, or more one topic from more than one angle, which is why I love what Emerson was sharing with French and poetry, because French is not just a language. French is a culture. French is numerous geographical locations. It's history, it's art, it's philosophy. And so the more dimensions that you add, the more reserve you're going to build, and the more that you actually flex and really dive deep into the value of that. And that's part of what this whole deep thing is all about. If you're joining us and you haven't said hello yet, please do hit the thumbs up. Let me know what memory power means to you. What do you want from your memory? What does memory power actually mean? The more active we are on these, the better. I'll tell you a little bit about what memory power means for me. Memory power is being able to be, I'm sometimes on calls with people that I've never met before and just remember their name. Sometimes you see it just for a flash, or they do a survey before they get on a call with me for private training, and just to memorize their details. So I don't have to look at the notes, and I can really recall what they've said before that we get on a call and talk to them from memory about them. And then while they're talking, being able to remember what they say without having to take notes. Now, there's no shame in taking notes, but memory power means to me not having to take notes to remember what they said, and being able to juggle multiple pieces of information while someone's talking, remembering what they're saying. And the thing that's so powerful about it, and why it's so deep in terms of developing relationships with people and actually serving them better, if you're in customer service or you're in any way that you want to interact with people at a deeper level, is because when you have things in memory as opposed to written down, you think about them differently. You make deeper connections. You make many, many more levels and layers of connection, and it's really, really powerful to do. So that's part of what memory power means for me. Another part of what memory power means to me is being able to get as close to the ideal of pure raw memorization, which is looking at information once and remembering it, right? Now, it doesn't always work out that way sometimes, but really there's processes that enable you to get very close to that, to reproduce that ideal situation. And that comes from the process of the magnetic memory method and so forth. Dustin is here, says, hey Anthony, just working through video 4 on the starter package, loving it so far. Thank you for taking that, Dustin. I really appreciate it. Thanks for letting me know. Thanks for being here. It's a great privilege to meet with you, and let me know how you're doing and if you have any observations and so forth. The point is that we want to first, to get really, really deep, we want to define, that's what that F is helping us remember here, to define what memory power means. There's so many people who say, they put into Google, I want to improve my memory power. What does it mean, right? The more you put time into defining the meaning of the things that you're looking for, the easier it becomes to develop the path towards obtaining that goal. But if you're really unclear and unfocused about it, then it gets harder to actually accomplish the goal. How can you accomplish a goal that you're not clear about? Now, that sounds obvious and common sense and so forth, but common sense isn't that common, and things that are obvious are obviously often ignored. We see that every day in our life, so it makes sense to repeat it often in order to really help the most amount of people get this, start to use it as a tool, because it's one of the most powerful tools in the world. define what you mean by the things that you say so that you actually mean what you say and say what you mean. Those are two very powerful things. You might know the reference that I'm getting to there. There was a Stanley Fish article that talked about that. Emerson says, I read a story of a man who memorized hundreds of ID numbers in Auschwitz while he worked on the transport ramp. He also memorized a lot of names. Wow, I'd love to, if you ever come across that story, I'd love to read that. Harry Lorraine told me a great story about one of his students in the POW camps and the memory stuff that came out of that, and really, really interesting how memory is different in different contexts. And so if you caught last week's episode of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, it was on stress in memory and how that stress can cause you to remember things much easier, but we don't normally want to be in stressful situations in order for that to work. Viktor Frankl was a memory master also. My desire is to have my memory tuned up under stress. Great, so that's a definition, right? That's part of the D.E.E.P process here, is defining. And I haven't heard that Viktor Frankl was a memory master, but I'm going to look into that deeper now that you mention it. He's obviously a very profound person who has said things that are well worth remembering and are remembered by people who have read his stuff. So thanks for mentioning him. And I imagine that that he had some stress that caused him to memorize things. But you know, also when you have had experiences like that, you probably appreciate life a lot better when you have freedom and when you are free from some of that tyranny that he would have experienced. Then you probably already remember things better without any techniques because you're able to, you know, really appreciate things after an experience like that. I don't know if that's universally true, but I would imagine. So Emerson says he had his manuscript in his head all through the experience, so that makes him a master, in my opinion. Yeah, well, yeah, and there are stories of people who needed to rewrite things from memory. Like Einstein apparently had to rewrite one of his major works completely from memory. I've only recently come into that information, and I need to look more into it. It's quite interesting sort of story. But this is back to what we were talking about reserve, right? So we build up reserve through consistent exposure, and we build it through looking at things from multiple angles. And that's why some people who are experts, or what comes to be expert, are people who can just talk and talk and talk and talk about any topic or pound out a book in a couple of weeks because they have such deep reserve and they've made so many connections that they can just pump it out. And and like everybody wants this, they fantasize about it, they wish they could be an expert in this, that, and the other thing, but not everybody goes deep enough into that. And one of the reasons why is because they're just not defining what it is that they want out of it. So we got some more definition here from Rachid, who says, memory power also means to me to be able to express thoughts and concepts with ease without having difficulty finding the right words to convey them. Excellent. So if you're joining us and you haven't said hello yet, please do. Hit the thumbs up, post either now or if you're watching the replay in the discussion below, what memory power means to you. And exactly what Rachid is saying is also one of my things. I used to be a stumbly, mumbly person. I couldn't talk the way that I can now, but I had to practice it. And one of the things that you do is you practice speaking from memory. I have a course called Speak from Memory in the masterclass that's about how you develop that skill and how you develop it in speaking another language and how you develop, you know, candor and swagger so that you're just free to speak based on your expertise. But the expertise has to exist in the first place. You can't go deep on topics when you don't have expertise from a reserve. So you get the reserve from continual study from multiple angles, and you get it from actually using memory techniques to make sure that you have that information. You have it real deep. So I just mentioned Einstein, and I can tell you that the name of the book was A World Without Time, and I can tell you that it was by a guy named Pale, I think it's pronounced Pale, P-A-L-L-E, Yorgrau, right? Which I memorized it, right? And it now becomes part of not only hard memorization of the title of a book and the name of an author, but it also starts to build the reserve because just that simple act of memorization is a foundation upon which you can then start to build reserve and add more details. And then when I read more about Gödel, who is talked about in the book at great length, and his incompleteness theorem, then I have a basis. And the more solid bases that you build through memory palaces and through the associations, the more your reserve builds and the more you can begin to talk about this thing. stuff, but it's not overnight, and I'm not necessarily going to rattle off like an expert about the incompleteness theorem or Einstein or anything like that. But the more that I attend to these things, then the more I would be able to, if that becomes a goal. But I need to define it as part of memory power, and I share, Rachid, your definition there of memory power. That's very, very important. Binary options expert is here. Hello, how are you? It's Hamad. Hamad, thank you for being here. It's nice to see you again as well. Thanks for saying hello. What does memory power mean to you? I want to elicit your participation, your activity. It's good for your memory. It's good for your learning. I know that a lot of people, they go to classrooms, they don't want to participate. That's fine. But if you want to get the most out of things, that's one of the ways that you learn more, is to participate. Put things into your own words. And even if you don't feel like being in the chat or you don't want to leave a comment below, that's all fine if you're watching the replay. But then just think, what would you write? What would your response? What would your response be? Salo is here. Hello. Great to see you here. Thanks for saying hello. That's a way that you can participate without participating. Totally fine. But do it. Make sure you process things in your own words, in your own thoughts, and actually do the exercises. You don't get results from exercises if you don't actually do them. I think that that's probably a universal rule. Maybe I stand to be corrected on that, but I doubt it. We define memory power, or we define memory techniques, or we define our goals, and we define them as much as we can in order to actually get the results that we're looking for. It's really, really important. The more preparatory work you put into defining things, the better off you will be. And it will help you create your reserve. It will help you create your reserve, your memory reserve. By the way, speaking of going deep, later this week, doing a webinar, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/deep, and we'll have a live session for you that's private, not on YouTube, totally just for us. So that's at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep, and we'll be going deeper and deeper and deeper. But it all starts with defining. So put some thought before you register for that. The link should be visible for you below also somewhere on your screen, so you just click it to get registered for this webinar. But the more you define what memory power means for you, the more you're going to get out of these sessions, because then you'll be able to do the next thing, which is establish, right? You can't really establish a proper memory program for yourself if you haven't defined what memory power means for you. If you don't know what exactly you want the outcome to be from memory, at least for now, it can change over time, no problemo, but, or no problemas, you can really, really enable yourself to create a better path just by putting some thought into definitions of what it is that you want, right? And then you'll begin to craft a better path. You'll have better outcomes because you've crafted a better path, and you'll spend the time on the actual targeted memory techniques that actually get you a result. So, if you really want to help yourself remember this, type in what this word is, this second word is. Go ahead, I'm going to see if anybody actually does that. But if you already forgotten, then maybe you want to do memory training that helps you remember things in live situations when you're learning. And there's ways to do that that are very, very powerful. And we'll be talking about them on this webinar session, deep. So make sure you're registered for that at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. Sorup is here. Says it's hard to make memory palaces, and why is hard to implement and study. It's not hard to create memory palaces unless you decide for it to be. So have you taken the free course? Do you have the worksheets? If not, please make sure that you do and follow the instructions there, and that should make it much, much easier for you. So that's at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. And be registered for this upcoming webinar as well. But this shouldn't be difficult at all. I don't understand the difficulty if you're following the guidance and instructions. Now, in terms, Swarup, of it being hard to implement and study, that may come down to defining what is it that you want in particular, because the definition part of going deep has a lot of dimensions to it. We've been focusing on one in particular, but you can also define your outcomes for particular study sessions. And so we talk a lot about that in the training, and how to really, really define your preparation of the information so that it actually matches the outcomes that you're looking for. Very few people ever do enough with this. And then that leads to the rest being very difficult. Ghost Dog is here. Oh, well, hello. Ghost Dog is one of my favorite movies. It's a Jim Jarmusch movie. I don't know if you've seen it. says, hi, I'm 19 from Scotland and really getting into mnemonics. Been reading a lot of Dominic O'Brien, and very optimistic about my future. Excellent. Optimism is good. It just keeps getting better and better and better. So keep on studying, keep on implementing, keep on practicing, keep on reading. There's so many people out there to study. It's all good. SIP. Actually, sorry, I take that back. It's not all good, actually. This is good. This whole session we're doing now is good, but there actually are some things you gotta be aware of out there. So there's a consumer awareness guide on magnetic memory method. I'm gonna update it for 2018, coming up real soon. But you do wanna study, implement, and practice, but you also wanna be aware. There are a lot of people out there teaching memory techniques who don't actually use them, and so they're giving, maybe the advice isn't so harmful, but they're sometimes talking about things they don't know, and it's pretty easy for people who do them to spot that. But more and more people are letting me know about some pretty crazy products out there, ranging from 99-cent books that are 14 pages to entire really expensive programs by people who just simply don't know what they're talking about. So I correct myself. I like to say it's all good, but actually there's some traps out there. Ghost Dog says, Ghost Dog is a great film. Thanks for the advice. You're absolutely welcome. I'm appreciative that you're here. Binary Options Expert says, I remember you're writing a book. How's it going? Can't wait for it to get published. Yeah, well, great. The update there is that the book is being written as we speak. The new one, the current one, if you don't have it, is the Memory Connection. You can get it at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. This is going to soon be sold out. So if you want this, you need to get it, and you can only get it directly from me. The next book is to be announced, exactly how that's going to work. I'm not revealing the title yet, but I'm really excited about it. And thanks to everybody who was on the previous live stream, because you helped write the outline. And it's going to be the best book I've ever written, and it's probably going to wind up being the ultimate memory improvement book, although we'll see. I mean, I don't want to make exaggerated claims that I can't fulfill a promise on, but I'm not sure that a book has ever been written in collaboration with the people that it's for in the memory world. Maybe, but most likely not, So I'm really excited about that. Binary Option says, will it be available on Amazon? I need the hard copy though. Well, I don't know yet, but probably, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. The new one, but this one is not available on Amazon, and you can get the direct hard copy directly from me. It takes a while to get to you because it's coming from Australia, but I tried to make this look edible, so don't eat it if you get it. Because I always look at it and I'm thinking, I want to eat this. But in any case, I can't say how the new book is going to be available because I'm not exactly certain of the conditions of its release. What I mean by that, for those of you interested, is that I may seek a traditional publisher for it, which is unusual for me because I think that traditional publishers, they often ruin memory books because I'm about real memory techniques and not about, some of the things that are taught at the mass market level in order to just generate mass market sales. I think that is not the path to helping people in the way that I can help people. So it's not necessarily going to be a beginner's book. It's going to be a book based on the actual things that everybody asked for on that live session, including what I had prepared in advance, which are things that haven't been talked about before in the memory training world that I've ever seen. And so I'd like very much to go with a traditional publisher, but I don't know if it's going to happen. But we'll see. The drafting is going great. The outline is really solid. I'll be sharing the outline with y'all soon. I want to get it a little bit more finalized, and then you'll have the opportunity to see, hey, wait a second, I think that we're still missing this. We'll go through that as many times as it takes because I want to make this the ultimate memory book. But again, not making some huge promise, but that it's going to be the ultimate, because there's always the ultimate book yet to come, right? That's just the way it works. But part of what I'm doing there to go really deep is defining things, defining what people actually want, what's going to help them. And that's what you need to do when it comes to memory power. So if you're just joining us and you haven't said hello yet, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world in the chat, or if you're watching the replay, in the discussion below, and tell me what your definition of memory power is. This material most likely will go into the book. So after defining things, we can use our definition to help establish how we're going to get the memory that we want. Vanessa's here from Idaho. Hello, Vanessa. Thanks for saying hello. Really great to meet you here. Another pilgrim is here, suggests self-publish through Lulu with an option to distribute through Amazon. Yeah, Lulu is great, maybe, I don't know. I know a lot about book publishing, actually. I've been self-publishing since I was 14 years old. I had zines for years. I sent my zines all over the world. I went to zine conventions. I don't know if you know what zines are, or if you were part of that world yourself, but it's going to be hard to beat the self-publisher out of me. And there's a lot of ways to do it, and a lot of interesting ways. Right or wrong, the industry still frowns upon self-publishing, and in some cases the criticisms and the reasons why are there. But you have to understand, when you are publishing through a major publisher, you're doing a lot of things to please corporations and not necessarily doing the teaching that you could be. I have had some really interesting chats about this with Gary Weber, who wrote Happiness Beyond Thought and Evolving Beyond Thought. And these are self-published works. And I said, hey, you know, these need to be audiobooks. They need to be Kindle books. So many people aren't getting it. And he said, no. And maybe for some of those same reasons, but other ones as well. If you don't have these books, Happiness Beyond Thought and Evolving Beyond Thought, highly, highly recommended. Please do avail yourself of them. Get them, because these are life-changing books. These will make you feel very, very good if you implement. Remember, it always comes down to implementation. We study something, we implement, and then we practice what we've implemented. It doesn't even have to work all the time. Just keep working it, because when you work the techniques, you get results. So define and then establish a practice that essentially lets you do it one sip at a time, right? Study, implement, and practice. This is how you get memory power. You define it, you establish ways of practicing it, and then you keep going from there. And we've got some more to go deep here. Let's check in with our chats. So Emerson asks, how can we get a copy of your book? So the memory connection here, this is at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. And that's the only way to get it at the moment, and copies are running out. Andy's here. Hello, Andy. Thanks for saying hello. I have many, many books in Amazon, but this one is not in Amazon. There's a reason why, and it's because of how it's designed to help the people that it's for. If it's not for you, no problem. But if you want it, I'm going to be capping it out when the last copy is gone, and then it's gone. And there's not that many left. There's 4 boxes, I believe, and I'm not sure how many copies are in there, but it's getting real thin. And so the people who have it, they all seem real, real happy, and it's a very particular program. And after that, we'll see what I do. I might run a second edition, but I might not, because I'm really quite happy with it as it is, and it will become the stuff of legend, as everybody should have a book that is the stuff of legend and very, very exclusive for people who are serious about study, implementation, and practice. So that's that. Again, not sure what will happen. Be kind of sad to not make it eternally available, but I had decided to do it that way before that. I had a conversation or a correspondence with Gary Weber about why he's not making audiobooks or PDFs of this available, particularly on Amazon. And I'm just sort of like, yeah, at least for this project, that's very right in this case. So sounds weird, I know, but like I said, I've been self-publishing since I was 14, and it is an art and a craft. Ghost Dog says, I just recently memorized a short list of 6 Scottish myths and legends using a completely imagined mind palace not found anywhere in my real life. The ability to remember actual historical stories. Oh man, this chat is hard sometimes. The ability to remember actual historical stories and not just shopping lists is really uplifting. Yeah, I'm really not a shopping list guy. This is one of the reasons why traditional publishing has never been for me, because they're all like, yeah, but when are you going to talk about how to memorize a shopping list? Come on, guys, look. Define what memory power means for you, and then build that outcome. Who needs to memorize shopping lists? Chefs, culinary experts. Don't memorize things that do not immediately improve your life. If its shopping list immediately improves your life, then go for it. But for most of us, we're looking at things like foreign language vocabulary and phrases. We're looking at things like numbers that we really ought to have for our personal security and the security of our loved ones in our minds. We're talking about the actual facts that make us better at our jobs. We're talking about all the things that make us better contributors to society so that we can earn more at our jobs, so we can help more people in our lives and have a better feeling at the end of the day that we did something meaningful. Our memory can serve that. Shopping list, probably at the bottom of the heap in terms of getting that done. Maybe I'm a little bit dogmatic on that point, but really I don't see the point. And it makes me sad every time I see it in yet another new memory improvement book, as if people are wandering around the streets screaming in pain, oh my goodness, I forgot my shopping list again. Just pick up the phone and say, what was it that you wanted? Now, I'll contradict myself though, which is that a great memory exercise is when someone says, here's what I need you to pick me up at the grocery store, and then you memorize it, right? But you can do that if you know how to memorize foreign language vocabulary without a special chapter devoted just to shopping lists. You can do it very, very easily. So back to Ghost Dog having the ability to remember actual historical stories and not just shopping lists. Oh yeah, we got that. Vanessa says she can see inside her head, see the words, see the actual objects. That's excellent. Not everybody can see things that way, but if you can, you have an extra special skill. I'd still wrap in the other magnetic modes. We'll be talking about the modes on the webinar coming up later this week. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. There's a link down below already there for you so you can get registered. Ghost Dog says, I've of course been reviewing the journey every few hours to help cement it into my long-term memory. Excellent, excellent. This is really super important. Review. Not everybody does it, but everybody should. You know, that's now. It's interesting because if you get into the science of it all and you look at all the studies, it's sort of half and half. Like some people really, really need to focus on the encoding part of memory techniques more than the decoding, and some people need to focus way more on the decoding than the encoding in order to get things into long-term memory. You'll need to find that for yourself, but never be too sure. Right? Because we often tend to get really confident with these techniques. And it's often when we try to make the shortcut and say, oh yeah, I got that one real good, that we stumble. I talked about that on last week's episode with the episode on stress and memory, and there's a very, very important story everybody needs to know. So if you haven't heard that episode, go to magneticmemorymethod.com. It's the very most recent episode, and listen to it, stress and memory. Not sure why that one wasn't as popular as it should have been, but maybe people are already feeling stressed out and didn't want more stress. But it's meant to decode your stress, diffuse your stress so you can learn memory better. Harold's here. Hello, Harold. Great to see you always. This is the Harold in Sydney, I think, right? Hopefully memory serves properly. We're going to be in Sydney in August, actually. So we might do a live training there in Sydney. That would be fun to see you there, if so. Courtney, do you have any advice for using the magnetic memory method for a person who is blind? Yes, I do. To create a memory palace, if you can't see it, if you have no sense of spatial imagery at all, which I find, I mean, I've never been blind, so I don't know. I can't even say what I'd imagine it would be to be like. But then you could potentially start by running your hands along walls and build up your spatial sensory awareness there, and then you don't have to see things at all. A lot of memory, like the memory champions who are memorizing decks of cards in less than 20 seconds, less than 16 seconds, they don't have time to see pictures in their mind. So you don't need to see pictures in your mind, because if you're doing this, and even when I practice, like I just don't really see pictures in my mind. It's not really a visual art at the end of the day. It's a synesthetic art that tries to weave together as many sensory modalities as possible. We'll be talking about this on the upcoming webinar at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. If you're not registered, the link should be available for you down below, or just go to magneticmemorymethod.com/deep, get registered. All right, so Mulse is here from New York City. I love New York. I lived in New York for 2 years, up in Washington Heights. You say, in my opinion, memory means to fluently recall information around the subject my mind is on. Great, great. Thank you for sharing that definition. By the way, if you're joining us live and you haven't shared the definition, That's the first thing that we want to do when we go deep into memory techniques. So let me know what your definition of memory is, and I would love to talk about that for you. Harold says, yes, Sydney. Okay, so little memory test for me. I know it's not a profound one, but these things matter, right? They matter in life. They matter to me anyway, to know you all. And to just use memory techniques, right? Memory techniques are spending time on encoding, spending time on decoding, making sure it actually enters long-term memory. It's really important. It's really important. And what I was saying before is that basically everybody needs to find balance between the encoding and the decoding and figure out what works for you, but never be too sure. Never be too sure. Harold asks, got any tips for learning things from textbooks, like ones with heavy content? I'm not a bookworm, so I find it hard at times. Yes, there's a podcast episode all about it. If you search how to memorize textbooks, I should be on page 1 of Google. If you need to add magnetic, that would be great. Please look that up. Download the podcast, listen to the material. There's an infographic there for you. How to memorize textbooks. Should get it for you on Google. Check that out and search it up. All right, great question though. Textbooks are really simple to deal with. You just need a strategy. So again, define the outcome and then establish the strategy. If you need help with the strategy, well, Magnetic Memory Method has lots and lots of trainings for you. And as you know, I think that this is a portal to others as well, which is why I interview other memory experts. So don't stop with just the one. Continue. So what are we going to do next? Well, we've got to define what memory power means to us, define what it is we want from it, define what our goals are supposed to do so we can build proper milestones towards reaching it. So if it's 100 words, well then we're going to define the journey towards that. So 10 words a week, for example, would be 10 milestones towards 100 words. Like that, defining. The more time you put into this, the easier it is to establish the practice, the methods that you're going to use, the schedule, and so forth. So I'll fill in our little establish thing here. And now we have define and establish. And that is halfway to deep. Everybody enjoying this? Let me know in the chat if you're enjoying it. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't already. Let me know where you are in the world if you're just joining us. And let me know what memory power means to you. Having a great time here. Just in case you haven't heard, they say you got to repeat things more than 7 times these days. More like 15 times, they're saying, because attention span has gotten so bad. I don't know about that, but magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. We're going to go even deeper into the deep dive technique later this week in a private webinar, but you'll need to be registered at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. And I look forward to seeing you there. So yeah, define and establish. Really, really powerful stuff. And you know, one of the things that you can do, like Harold just asked about memorize textbooks and so forth, is be aware of the human tendency not to take action on suggestions. I don't know if that's going to be something that Harold does or not, but there's something called speed of implementation. And we know that if we don't take action on suggestions within a very short window of time, we almost certainly never will. So one of the rules that's been really powerful for me in my life is speed of implementation. Get an idea, hear a book recommendation, it's ordered as quickly as possible, not Kindle. Kindle books get lost too easily. Actual physical books that are coming to the door. Someone mentions a book to me, boom, it's ordered, it's coming. The physical thing. It ups the it ups the actual completion level of following up on things when you just use the speed of implementation rule. So if someone suggests something to you and it fits your definition because you've actually done definition work in your life for the goals that you want, then establish the habit of actually following up on things right away, because speed of implementation is what makes the difference for so many people. It's just one of those general rules. Just ignore it at your own peril. It's such a powerful tool. Such a powerful tool. So always, always implement with speed. With speed, with speed, with speed. Really, really important. So that's that. Now, can anybody guess what the next E is for? Got a little clue in there for you. And certainly would be interested in anybody filling in the blanks if they would like to. Really having a great time today, and so much fun, so much fun. I've always got a nice little deck of cards here to do a little memory practice every day, and little bit of language learning, a little bit of reading. I got so much reading. You know, German upkeep is difficult. So the Brisbane Book Club is coming up with finally a book that I actually want to read. I always try to avoid the World War II stuff because it's so depressing, but this one looks really good. So I've been reading this, and it's Und Gott sprach, der Teufel ist auch nur ein Mensch, which means, and God spoke, the devil is also just a human, or something like that. I'm not a German translator, but it's really good because that reserve that we were talking about before, the earlier of the call, if we don't continue to populate our reserve, like if you develop bilingual skills, for example, you'll lose your muscle memory first through your mouth, or typically you would, and then you'll lose the ability to actually understand words and so forth. So I'm done really good. It's more than a year now since I left Germany, and speaking every day, but this has been super powerful to find books and read them. At least once a month I'm on a call with somebody speaking German, have a great time. You should do that too, in order to keep up with languages. So Ghost Dog talks about encode, asks about encode, ENCODE, question mark. What's your question about encoding, Ghost Dog? Please be specific. That will help me help you. Generally, encoding means elaborative encoding in the memory science, and what they talk about in terms of elaborative encoding includes what we're going to talk about on this webinar at /D.E.E.P. And it is, sorry, I was going to go into this, but we're going to talk more about elaborative encoding. But that is part of it. It's exercise encoding and decoding. So it's the exercise of memory techniques. Every time you use memory techniques, you're exercising the memory techniques. You're getting brain fitness from them. But that's a great guess. You're absolutely right on line there. That's where we were going. But yeah, exercise the techniques. And you exercise the techniques. I didn't quite leave enough space there. Exercise the techniques by using them, which gives you brain exercise, which gives you the ability to get better at the techniques and develop your expertise and your memory reserve in a particular topic. But encoding comes from elaborative encoding. And so we want to elaborate as much as possible. And we do that by using all of the magnetic modes, which we'll be talking about on this webinar. So please join us. And it is going to be a great time to go through some training where we can get stuff up on the screen, and love to see you there. So to go deep, define, establish, exercise. Anybody got a guess for the last one? We've mentioned it a few times already today, but it's probably the most important of them all. And it's not the same as exercise, even though it's related. But we need to have ongoing exercise of our brain, of our memory abilities, of our skills with these techniques. And Andy's got it. Practice. Exactly. Practice. And practice, why is practice different than exercise? Sandra got it as well. Cool. Thank you, Sandra. Good to see you. Thanks for your engagement. But practice is different than exercise because every time we're using memory techniques, we just get exercise by default. But practice is deliberate practice. And what deliberate practice means is that we're going to put ourselves in a situation where we're not going to be interrupted by apps and so forth. You can exercise using memory techniques anytime, all the time. You should, throughout the day. So Ghost Dog was talking about that earlier. And you want to just rehearse what's in your mind frequently and with respect to the outcome that you've defined, right? And in order to make that happen, then it's just a matter of doing it, and you can set reminders for yourself if you want, or however the case may be, that you do this reminding for yourself. I've gotten into a habit of it, so it just happens. But it doesn't happen on autopilot because it just does. It's because I built a life that supports that and practiced it. So that's what we want to do. But the actual deliberate practice is isolating oneself from interruptions, having a defined time where you're going to sit down and do this, and you're going back to define, you're going to do it based on the outcomes that you've defined and the practice that you've established to achieve those outcomes. So again, if you wanted to memorize 100 words in a language, then you're going to figure out how many words per day are you going to work on, and how are you going to find that time to practice and do deliberate practice. The deliberate practice of the techniques with definition and established practice form with goals and in a way that exercises your brain. And then you're going to exercise the actual techniques themselves through practice, but that practice needs to be deliberate. It needs to be scheduled. It needs to be a time where you focus on it, and that's it. D. Snyder from Ghost Dog, don't talk about it, be about it. Exactly. A lot of people, they think and dream and fantasize and hope and wish and pray all about memory techniques, but they never just sit down and do them. You get the results. A lot of, you get it from doing. DOC, right? Doing is the origin of confidence, is the origin of consistency, is the origin of creativity, it's the origin of courage, it's the origin of competence, it's the origin of control of these techniques. Really, really powerful. Bad Boss here. Oh, it's been a while. Great to see you again, Bad Boss. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the comments where you are and what memory power means to you. Having a great time so far with everybody. Thank you for all the engagement. Love meeting with you all. Courtney says, what do you have for turning complex and analytical questions from a study guide into a memory palace? So you want to turn complex and analytical questions into a memory palace? Please say more. I'm not sure what you mean by turning questions into a memory palace. I have an inkling of what you possibly mean, but we won't get into it without some clarification to make sure we're on track here. We want to go deep. We want to define. That way we can establish how we're going to exercise the techniques through practice. I always get a chuckle when people say, well, these techniques better work for me, or I hope they work for me. That's not how it works. You work the techniques. That's the way it works, and that's the way you get results. Like Ghost Dog says, quoting D. Snyder, a great quote. I love D. Snyder. Don't talk about it, be about it. So I haven't seen it yet, but apparently there's a really great documentary about Twisted Sister. Man, what a crazy adventure. I've heard some of the story on a podcast interview. Jane is here. Hello, Jane. Thanks for saying hello. 9:30 in the morning in South Korea, learning a lot. Excellent. Thank you for being here. Great to meet all the new people for the first time who've shown up. Thanks for saying hello. Let me know where you are. It's wonderful what the technology can do. I always feel very grateful and blessed that it exists at all, and really enjoy that you're able to be here. And one of the things you can do if you care about this kind of education is let your friends know, share links with them to this channel so they can get subscribed, click the bell. The more the merrier. We're going for speaking of defining goals and so forth, I've defined a goal of just how big I would love this to grow, and made it realistic, of course, working towards it. Everything is going according to plan. In fact, it's exceeding the plan, and I'm very, very delighted, and every single share and mention and like and comment and thumbs up matters. So practice is the last one we got there. Barbara's here from Tacoma, Washington. I love Tacoma. I used to live not too far away in Vancouver, Canada, and so forth. Nice to meet you, Barbara. Thanks for being here. Really delighted. We've talked about going deep in our memory, defining what memory power means to us. So if you have a definition of what memory power means for you, let us know. And then you establish the practice that serves that outcome. You exercise your brain by having dedicated practice, and you exercise your memory, and you get the results. It's as simple as that. And it's really, really powerful. We're going to have a webinar later this week. To get registered, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/DEEP, D-E.E.P. And I look forward to seeing you there if that seems like something for you. Get registered anyway, just in case. If you can't make it, no problem. But if you're not registered at all, then you won't get the notification of when it's taking place and the reminder to be there. And we're going to go deeper than today. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So, that's really what the DEEP principle is all about. If you let it guide you, it will serve you. If you follow each of these steps, you'll get much better results. And this doesn't just apply to memory techniques, this applies to everything. Anything you want to accomplish in life, define what it is. Define what that outcome is, and then establish the practice towards obtaining that goal. And then understand the difference between exercise and practice, and make sure that you're dedicating time for the practice, knowing that even when you think about your practice later, you'll be getting exercise from it. And there's a lot more tips, of course, to be had around that, but it's for everything. I use this exact same process for what I'm doing with these books, Happiness Beyond Thought and Evolving Beyond Thought, which I highly recommend to you as well. Really great journey coming out of that, but it requires that thinking, and you do it more than once, you know. It's not just about the one time. You got to revisit these things, and the more you revisit them, the more you get the nectar out of them that nourishes you, keeps your excitement high, keeps you motivated, keeps you going. It's not it's just not possible to achieve large learning goals if you don't have guiding frameworks and structures and formulas. Often you need more than one. That's why we got SIP, it's why we got DOC, it's why we got PEACH, it's why we got all the little things that I came up with, the RWAP and iDozer and everything. I mean, these are the guiding principles that keep me moving, keep me going. And they've been helping other people too, which is always great. And you can make up your own. Nobody has a monopoly on putting together words into acronyms that help, you know? And the more you think about that, the more you'll find that you have everything that you need already in your mind. Already in your mind. So, define, establish, exercise, and practice. Go deep. Go deep. All right. If anybody has any questions, anything you want to ask, then let loose. We'll do a little bit of mailbag here and see what we come up with. So here's a note from Michael, who's an octogenarian trying to learn Italian. Needed a bit of a boost to rejuvenate his flagging enthusiasm for the task. What's frustrating me about my memory is my inability to remember Italian grammar. I use flashcards in daily reading to help with vocabulary, but I find Italian syntax very tricky and the prepositions extremely difficult to get right. All right. Well, there you go. I mean, the answer is often in the description of the problem. So define what this problem with syntax is. What exactly is very tricky about it? What exactly is very extremely difficult to get right? Listen to the language that Michael's using here. He's exaggerating the problem without actually speaking definitively about what it is, right? You want to fail? Use language like that to yourself. That's called self-hypnosis. Define it with greater clarity. You'll see that the problem really isn't the problem you think it is. So when I see emails like this, it's very difficult to help people because they're not defining what it is they're talking about. They're just using extreme language about how extremely difficult it is. Syntax is very tricky and the prepositions extremely difficult to get right. Oh, come on, really? You know what this is? That's the world's smallest violin crying just for you. And I mean that with all the kindness and love in my heart. But think about how that we do this. I mean, I've done it myself and I catch myself on it as much as I can. And I say to myself, you know what this is? That's the smallest violin crying just for me. It's good to do that to yourself. It's good to put some checks and balances and measures on the language you're using to describe the world, because you're usually making the problem when it's not a problem at all. If you'll just define what it is you find tricky, what it is you find extreme about it, you'll find it's not really that extreme at all. And then you establish the path that's going to make it easy for you to learn, or easier for you to learn, or more fun for you to learn. But you can't do that if you're blinding yourself by using words that make it extreme and tricky. It probably isn't nearly as bad as it seems. So thanks for that email, Michael. That is my suggestion for you, and I hope it helps. I hope it helps. Courtney says, what I mean is, what do you do with questions when you are asked things like if you have facts A, B, and C, and how they affect each other? Okay, well, for example, what is a fact that you're talking about? Are you talking about multiple choice questions and so forth? Multiple choice questions are difficult because they're unfair, they're illogical, and they should be banned, in my view. It's not a ethical testing system, and it requires a lot of counterintuitive thinking that shouldn't really be necessary. The evolution of multiple choice questions is something I want to look into in greater detail, instead of pretending that I know the history about it. But I'll bet there's a history, and I'll bet that history has nothing to do with helping humans be better learners and do better in their lives. It probably, my guess is part of an optimization process to automate marking and to reduce the load of teaching so they can sell more degrees to more people and pay teachers less. That's probably what's at the core of it. So that's the first thing to understand. And then the other thing to understand is that a lot of it, in terms of strategy for multiple choice questions, is taking as much time as you possibly can to really think through the traps and the snares, because it's very counterintuitive a lot of the time. Now, if you've memorized properly from a textbook, Harold asked earlier about textbook tips, search Google for magneticmemorymethod.com and how to memorize a textbook, you'll find strategy there that will make it much, much easier for you to win the game of multiple choice questions. But you need that information in your mind, and you need two levels of the information. You need specific knowledge, and you need memory reserve built up from general familiarity with the topic. Multh says, I really enjoy this. Language is important. It does create problems. Well, I'm not saying that, yeah, great. Thank you, Multh. I appreciate that. But I'm not saying that language doesn't create problems. I'm just saying that a lot of people just spend so much time not only focusing on the problems that they have, but exaggerating the power of those problems. And that's just it's not helpful. It's not helpful at all, because it's not that language learning isn't difficult. But if I sat around with the languages that I study and have studied and told myself stories about how difficult it was, never get anywhere. Instead, I tell myself a different story, which is the story of what is it that is going wrong. Define the problem. Get real specific about the problem. And all the other stuff we've talked about already. Moss says, I meant from the comment you read. Yeah, excellent. It's always interesting, these chats. I sometimes misread the intention of them, but I appreciate all the interaction. And he says to Courtney, why do you need to remember questions from your study guide? Usually just solving the problems will help you remember the material being taught. That's another thing, depending on the subject. Great point. And he says, I typically remember material not by studying practice questions, but by reading the chapters and taking the time to make sure I remember what I read. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you need to test. It's part of what memory techniques are all about. If you're going to use memory techniques, and anything that you do to memorize information, to remember information, is the use of some kind of technique. Reading a book is a technique. Now, are you optimizing the way that you read the book with a special technique or a process that you've learned and you've applied and practiced? If not, that doesn't mean you're not using a technique. Reading books are techniques. Books are actually designed to have you read them in particular ways, which is a technique of book design. It's a technique of rhetoric, it's a technique of presentation, and so forth. And he corrects himself, I mean taking time to make sure I understand what I read. Didn't mean remember. If I understand it, I tend to remember it. That's another dimension altogether. I would say that is in addition to what you said earlier, not separate or opposed to it. Understanding is also very, very important, but it's not always the bulletproof path to remembering things. Like, for example, I read A World Without Time recently, and there's stuff that I understand, but because I didn't memorize the actual terminology, I can't tell you the terminology. If I memorize the terminology, then not only is the understanding better, but the ability to communicate about what was understood is better. And then it makes the ability to receive feedback in discussion with other people better, because they could say, no, that term you're using actually is a little bit more complex, especially blah, 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 blah. And then you just open up the whole world by not just making sure you understand, but do you remember exact terms, right? As they're given. This is important. It matters. And it's part of understanding. Bad Boss says, memory power to me is how strong one is able to encode and recall information quickly and vastly. That's excellent, Bad Boss, and I really appreciate that from you, because I know you use memory techniques and if I recall correctly, have gone and competed or been at a live training we talked about before. And you say, as a beginner, a lot of the encoding strategies work well, but once your brain gets used to it, you really have to keep training your brain and refining your skills to recall, to keep it alive. Yeah, that's why memory techniques are a way of life, right? So you have the beginning stage, you might fall in love with these techniques and really go great, and boom, 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 boom. You'll plateau. Progress is not like this. It's like this. It's normal. It happens in every sport. It happens in every profession. People just, they may continually improve, but it's not a straight line. And you're exactly right. And that's why I talk a lot about the challenge frustration curve. So if you're no longer being challenged, then you're not learning, you're not improving. But if you're being frustrated, then you're often giving up, right? And so you need to be very sensitive to challenge and frustration in your own practice and continue to practice. Because memory techniques, like anything, they will lose their efficiency if you're not using them regularly. But that doesn't mean they'll disappear. It's like imagine having a sword, right? Well, once you have the sword, it's like a sword that stays with you forever, like a video game character, right? Once the sword is had, you can't get rid of it because it's like video game logic. I think in Legend of Zelda, for example, once you get the wooden sword, you can't get rid of it. You can switch it in for different tools, but you always now have the wooden sword. It's the same thing with memory techniques. Once you have the knowledge of memory techniques, you always have them. But that doesn't mean you have the best parry or swing or thrust or whatever all the words are for sword handling, right? You have those abilities to use the sword relative to your ongoing maintenance and making sure you're challenged over time. It's training, right? But that doesn't mean that you're totally defenseless. If you don't know memory techniques, you're totally defenseless, 100%. You don't have the sword. But if you have it, then it becomes a matter of how well oiled is it, how fast is it going to come out of the scabbard, and how fast is it going to come into play, and then how fast and quickly and efficiently is it going to actually achieve the outcome that you're looking for. So Bad Ba, really great contribution there. Love it. I appreciate it. That really helps define things a lot better for all of us. Barbara says, I remember my trigonometry in high school just by understanding a graphic of the unit circle. Oh, that's great. I mean, there's so many things that get encoded in certain ways. The question is, going back to Bad Ba's point, you know, if memory techniques are involved, then if you're going to use memory techniques, how well are they going to work in different situations, different contexts? Emerson says, you got me into the habit of reviewing memory work upon rising with your mega huge sleep mask. LOL. Right. Yeah, there's this old video where I was, I did a little wake-up session. Wasn't a very popular video, but I guess that's because my hair is wild at the most controlled of times. Anyways, thank you for watching those old videos, Emerson's. One of the things that, you know, people often don't do is go back through the existing catalog, but other people do. I know when I find a new podcast that I love, I'm just like deep into the archives because there's so much stuff that is there, and just because it's not new doesn't mean it's not super valuable. So, you know, if you go and make yourself an audiobook out of the 200 plus episodes of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, for example, you'll have tons and tons of learning. You don't have to do it all in one sitting, but over a couple months, you'll gain. And same thing with the YouTube channel. Go back and watch the old stuff. Quality control continues to improve, and some of those older videos do look old, but the content is still quite rich, and I stand by it, and that's why I don't delete it. So avail yourself for it. We don't know, people, how much longer the internet is going to be free like this. Net neutrality is threatening to take it away. Not only take it away, but influence us in ways so that we don't even want to take advantage of it as we have the opportunity to now. Won't get into a big speech about net neutrality and so forth, but if you're not aware of the threat that the internet is under, and the internet is always under threat, freedom is always under threat. It's under threat today. In one of my favorite cities that I spent so much time in my life, and sad truth, but you know, when I see a new podcast, I make sure I go and I get all of it so that I can encode it, because you don't know when the freedom of the internet is going to disappear. You just don't know. So enjoy it while you have it. Emerson says, I'm off for the next 2 days, so I'll binge watch your videos and go to the masterclass. I'm going to meditate now. Catch you on the flip side. Namaste, happy meditating, and Satanama and all that, and really great to have you here always on our live sessions. Thanks for being in the masterclass, and really always great to jam on these topics and learn more about where you're at. Have a great 2 days off. Talk to you soon. Thank you for being here. And for all of you who are here and haven't said hello yet, do say hello in the chat. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Hit that thumbs up. If you haven't put in your definition of memory power, part of going deep is defining what memory power means to you. Not just memory power, but what is it that you want? What's your goal? Have you defined your goal? That's how you establish the techniques that you're going to use. It's how you actually establish the patterns that you're going to follow. And then you exercise every time that you do it. and you practice in a dedicated way. Samit is here. Hello, Samit. Great to see you. Thanks for saying hello. Really, really love when you guys are engaged, making the most out of this. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll go into the mailbag a little bit deeper here while you catch up, catch your breath, catch your thoughts. Post away. Mohammed says, I'm not fully frustrated with my ability to memorize my study, but I need your achievement to boost my memory. I appreciate your work. You seem to spend a lot of time to enhance this field. Thanks a lot for what you present. We were waiting for more. Well, thanks, Mohammed, for the kind words. And yeah, to boost your memory, this is a huge part of, whoa, upside down there. This is a huge part of the practice. It's part of the process. Then after that, it's SIP. Study, implement, practice. Take it one step at a time. Be consistent about it. And then go deeper. Go deep with us on this free webinar. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/deep, and we'll see you there for more. We're going to get some things up on the screen you probably haven't seen before that'll help you on your journey. All right, Andrew's here. He says, just getting started with your course and really enjoying it. I'm a busy 40-something professional, and I'm looking to improve my memory with respect to technical accounting tax rules. Also looking for help on remembering numbers as well as names and faces of clients. Still going through the class segments, and I'll let you know if I have questions. Great. Well, that's all covered in the masterclass, so you will be well served. Thanks for emailing, Andrew. Jorge is here. He says that my stories improve him to move on with his dreams. Learning English right now. I feel that you've helped me a lot with your posts. Thank you for your time and your email. So thanks, Jorge, for that email. Really appreciate you emailing, taking the time. And let's see what else. Cindy says, looking forward to, this is a private call that she's going to be on. I'm familiar with your work and have started making a memory palace. I've drawn 2 and simply have not moved on. I'm eager to learn how to use them for language acquisition. I love the visual clues, the explosions, the fires, the colors. I'm ready to learn more and implement your ideas. My dream is to remember vocab and concepts quickly, and she gives some private stuff here. That's great. Well, I'm really looking forward to meeting you on this private call that is different than this one, but really great. Thanks for emailing. Is this pink ribbons with Chinese, Japanese name here? If so, thank you for saying hello. I'm only 15 minutes in, and this is like one of the best lives I've listened to so far. Oh yeah, you have it right there, pink ribbon with a new nickname. I'd love some Romaji for your Japanese there. So you can try and work with it. Andy says Japanese is written mostly in Chinese characters, so the characters have to be decoded both into a word's meaning and its pronunciation. Yeah, I mean, it depends. There are certain rules for when hiragana and katakana are used. But I'd be very interested in this. There are certainly a couple of Chinese characters in there as well. Ren is there, for example. Anyway, I love Pink Ribbon being here. Always a great person, and I'm glad. Thank you for the kind words. I'm glad you're enjoying it. We've been talking about D.E.E.P, just to review for you in case you missed it. Define what memory improvement means for you, what memory power means for you, and establish, exercise, and practice. Great, great, great stuff. Bad Boss says, when I practice, I find myself resorting back to logical imagery. When I show memory techniques to someone new, I'm able to make the imagery crazy fun, and they are like, wow, or they are wow. I'd like to do that more for me. Yeah, you got to catch yourself, Bad Boss. It's true. We'll sometimes, it's the don't be too sure, don't be too sure, don't be too sure rule. That's what I call it. I got to come up with a better term for it. D cubed, something like that. D cubed. Don't be too sure, don't be too sure, don't be too sure. Because the more, as you pointed out previously, the more we get familiar with these techniques, the more our need to raise the level of challenge works. And this is actually in the science called the von Rostorff effect, okay? So that's a very interesting word you might want to memorize. Von Rostorff is the person who studied this. And what it is it's the surprising, strange, weird imagery, right? And we tend to remember things that stand out more. But maybe we become a little bit desensitized to it, so we got to pump up the volume. However, Bad Boy, you gave a clue here, which is logic. You're making it too logical, perhaps. So I call this the congruity versus incongruity rule. Okay. So congruity is a tool. it would be like logic in your sense, perhaps. And then there's incongruity. And you just got to think, is this congruous? Is this actually possible in reality? If it's possible in reality, am I going to remember it? It's not a magic bullet, but it's a general kind of rule to keep in mind. Also, just testing all the usual things. Is it vivid? Is it bright? Is it zany? Is it wild? Do you have velocity in there? Is there action? Is there a reaction to the action? Where helpful? Not always helpful, but where helpful is it there? Are you going through all the modes? It's not just a picture, right? Sound, feeling. If someone's punching somebody else, have you taken a second to actually feel it, right? Is there a taste involved? Like, often punching is involved in these techniques of some level, maybe a boxing glove if you're learning language, because boxing gloves are powerful tools in many languages. Did you taste the taste of the boxing glove as it's punching that character? Did you smell the sweat? You know, not always useful tools, but it can help. And it's not logical to do these things, of course. Very, very well. So, Andy says, Pink Ribbon says, when I follow Anthony's advice, my Japanese vocabulary has skyrocketed. Memory palaces plus listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Andy says, I do most of those steps, but not the memory palace. Andy, the memory palace is not necessary for everyone, but for many people, it's a huge game changer. So even if it may not be for you, if you give it its due, you may find that it really helps. A lot of polyglots, they reserve it for what they call the stubborn quintile, because everybody has this stubborn amount of words they can't memorize no matter what. Almost everybody. Maybe there's somebody out there who doesn't have that problem, but it's a way forward for words that just won't stick any other way. So it doesn't have to be for everything. Pink Ribbon says, I admit I was skeptical about memory palaces, but I gave it a try and it's exactly what I was missing. Oh, I'm so great to hear that they served you. If you do it the right way, Pink Ribbon says, the magnetic way, the word will stick and become automatic. I think that that's exactly true for people who give it its due and really, really understand it and put it into action. Barbara says, I use the major method with good results. Haven't got the knack of the memory palace yet. Love to hear more about what that knack is you feel is missing, Barbara, because I'm sure that there's a solution for it if you're drawn to it. It's a very powerful technique, but great that you can do the major. Major is wonderful. It's such a beautiful technique, and it gets so much more powerful in a memory palace for reasons that might come up on this webinar here. In fact, let me make a mental note that it does. magneticmemorymethod.com/deep if you're not already registered to take this deeper. Bad Boss says, did I taste the boxing gloves? LOL. Thank you for expanding on this. I love it. Yeah, it's really, really powerful. Really powerful to make sure you're hitting all those modes. Andy says, that's just what I was going to say. Alder Richards said he uses memory palaces as a last resort if all other methods fail. Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned Ollie, because Ollie's a great mnemonist. I would really give him that honorary title. And the other thing too, and Ollie, you'd have to check this with Ollie. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but you know, his take on the whole flashcard world and Anki and so forth, there's always some kind of elaborative encoding. You're not just showing yourself information. You're interacting with it in a way. You can say it's mnemonic or not. It doesn't matter. You're doing some kind of encoding, some kind of intentional extra thing. It's not exposure alone. That's just madness. Madness. But yet so many people do it. And well, I'm not going to say that it is not working for them. I don't know. It's up to them. But there's lots of problems with spaced repetition, problems that are really easily solved just by understanding more about how memory works and not getting carried away with what people say works and what a lot of the software apps are claiming. They're not properly talking about what's going on with those apps, and it really is frustrating for people like myself who care about learners and really want them to have the best possible experience, but they're being wooed and seduced by claims made by software companies that are just not even remotely stacking chips in their favor. And in fact, in the language learning world, they're often, if they're getting any kind of memorization done whatsoever, they're memorizing vocabulary and particularly phrases that have zero use value or very little use value and no substitution work so that they're able to actually turn it into conversation. And they're not even being taught that, yeah, you need to have conversation. Some apps, whatever. Everybody has their own journey to go on. But the more you educate yourself and the more you do this kind of work, the more you're going to get results. All right, Tembiso emails. I can hardly concentrate on anything, and when lightly multitasked, I'm easily confused. Yeah, multitasking I got to do something about. I think multitasking is one of these words that's thrown around in ways that just is not useful. We tend to use words to cover a lot of different things at once, when actually there's better definitions to be done. Today's theme, define things better. So I'd love to hear more about what multitasking means here. The more you define things, the more you're going to get results. All right, so this is private student training here. Karen says, I'd like to say thank you so much for covering aphantasia in your podcast. It was a big help to me. Well, thank you for letting me know, Karen. The aphantasia podcast, if you haven't heard it, please check it out. It's got a special exercise there for you that you can try that's going to help you. The podcast is really where most of the action is. If you're interested in podcasts, please do check it out. The written version is there so you can read also if you're not a listener. So that's a real positive there. Okay, let's see. So Dora says she has a 400-page accounting book to be comprehended fully. Great. Well, use this process to help you, and the Memorize a Textbook episode of my podcast with everything in writing and an infographic there for you to help make sure that you fully comprehend the process and get the most out of it. Excellent, excellent. That was an interesting email exchange. I'll skip over that one. If you're here and you haven't said hello, please say hello in the chat. Let me know where you are in the world. And if you have any questions, keep them coming. And Cigar says, I want to learn German right now within 2 months. All right, well, define what exactly it is you want to do with German. Establish the practice. Figure out the words that are going to serve you the best. Find the people that you're going to speak with from memory and, exercise and practice. Figure out a reasonable daily goal. If you want, I have a whole blog post and podcast on the Freedom Journal. I'm going to do a video here pretty soon on the Freedom Journal so you can supplement that, and that'll help you. There's many, many tools to try, and I'm quite confident that you'll be served if you just dive in and use them. All right, so Tim says he wants to become a programming language expert. Excellent goal. I have learned several computer languages over the years, but they don't stick around. Memorizing the syntax of every programming language would be amazing. I have some friends who are also going through this. They're going to maybe fill me in a little bit more on what's needed, like Python, for example. Basically, Andy was kind of talking about this earlier. I don't know if you're still here, Andy, but solving problems is a huge part of learning here. So if you want to keep up with your syntax in programming language, then keep on programming in that language, or define the memory process that's going to give you much longer term memorization about that in that field. But use is a huge part of long-term memorization. All right, a couple more, and then we'll squeeze on out of here. If you've got any last comments or questions or things you want to say, then please do bring them up, and I'll be just delighted to cover that for you. We're having a webinar coming up later this week at magneticmemory.com/deep. If you're watching the replay, let me know down below in the discussion if you have anything that you'd like to say. Love to hear from you, and I do actually interact with them. A lot of fun. Let's see here. Sebastian says, I would like my memory to help me learn languages very much. It would be amazing, and I hope you can help me with my memory. Well, I can help you help yourself with your memory. Memory techniques always come down to self-study, and study needs implementation of the techniques, and it needs practice. Another tool that you can use is the D.E.E.P tool. So define your outcome. Learn languages. Well, what does learn languages mean? people get fantasies of fluency in their mind that are not helpful. And then they hear numbers. Well, you need thousands of words, or you need 2,000 words, or you need this. And they get all these weird numbers going on. I'm not going to say that it's wrong to have numbers in mind. In fact, it's very useful. But what does numbers have to do with fluency? I'm not fluent in English, okay? It's my mother tongue, and I'm not fluent in it. It never ends. There's always more to learn about the language. It's eternally evasive, and there's new words entering the lexicon all the time. So being fluent in English is a false goal. It's a fantasy, not going to happen. Likewise in German. However, what I can do is take a book in a language, and I can say, you know what? Every page, I'm going to have a goal of taking at least 3 words that I don't recognize or are somehow not familiar anymore, and I'm going to get them into a memory palace, and I'm going to work with them. Then, when I meet with my friend that I speak German with once a month, I'm going to make sure that I use those words. Pretty simple. I'm going to say, hey, I read this new Hans Rath book, and it was cool, and I learned these words, and I can't believe that Überzeugen was somehow unfamiliar to me for a few seconds, but it was, and that sort of thing. Very, very simple. But it's defined, right? It's defined. Define the outcome that you want. Then you can establish what's going to do the work for you, essentially. You have to work the techniques, of course. You have to work the established process, but it makes it much easier. It's just like, yeah, okay, maximum 3 words per page. Can be even less than that. Just to get some more memorization in here. See if I can find a word that I don't know. Not on this page. Well, whatever. I'm not going to read German to find words that I don't know. But it's just a great way of doing this kind of deep work to keep progress going. But you got to define things. So when people say, I would like very much to learn languages, let's get more defined about what that is. That's not a goal. That's just a wish. We got to really break it down to more substantial stuff. Andy says he agrees with the stuff about programming. If you use a computer programming language enough, you'll remember its syntax. Subroutine libraries can be complex, but not necessarily the language itself. Yeah. And I don't know programming well enough to really speak about it, but even subroutine libraries, to the extent that you have to memorize versus having like a lot of these things seem to be, again, I don't know the field, but they seem to be very easily searchable. So then the question is, what's the 20% or so of things that you keep searching again and again and again, and you'd save a lot of time if you could just memorize them, and then memorize those. You don't have to have everything under the sun memorized in order to have huge gains. It's all about defining the 20% that's going to make a huge difference in your life. It's the 80-20 rule, right? And that's sort of the principle underlying the choices I would make here. It's not every word that I don't understand. It's just a certain percentage, right? And even there'll be sentences where I'll figure out, yeah, okay, that word's a little bit lost on me, but I can figure it out in context. So I don't really need to look it up, not then anyway. So you don't need to look up every word. Depends on your level of fluency, depends on your outcome, your goal, and so forth. Be more defined. Sandra says, sorry to be so inept, but my chat messages freeze and I can't see the new messages. Sometimes it restarts. Currently it won't budge. Any idea what I might be doing wrong? Sorry about that, Sandra. Internet connection can be different for different people. Just refresh the page, come back to it, and it should catch up. I hope that helps. Your browser should have some sort of refresh. I don't know if you're on mobile, then you might just go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YouTube, type that in, and it should come up that you can find the live stream again. But in general, yeah, when that happens, refresh, move closer to your router, that kind of stuff can be useful. Hope that helps, Sandra. Dale says, I finished your course on remembering faces, and that's great. Looking forward to, that's one of my areas that is most in need of attention. Great, Dale, thanks for letting me know. Enjoy what happens there. Lots and lots of fun. Really great mailbag stuff. Sandra says, thank you. Yeah, I hope that works for you. Jaj Nandan says, can I reuse a memory palace? I'm a medical student from India. Yeah, you can reuse memory palaces. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it depends. When I'm memorizing cards like these, I'm reusing the same memory palace almost all the time. Sometimes I'll, going with what Bad Bob was saying earlier, I'll make sure to up the challenge by using a new memory palace so I don't get too confident and too rusty and so forth. But this is one of the ways that I tend to use the same memory palace over and over again. Also, for everyday things that come up, or just, I'll be talking with my wife and she'll say some word or phrase, I'll be like, oh, what was that? I'll just reuse the kitchen many times as a memory palace. So you can do it, but it just depends on your goal and if you've defined it. Really important and powerful to put in that definition of what it is you're trying to do, and then it'll answer the question for you of whether or not you should reuse memory palaces. You should certainly revisit them. That's how you're going to get it into long-term memory. It's through a strategic revisitation process. All right, so now we got an email. Says, I guess the most frustrating thing is making images that I can remember. I understand the importance of magnetic imagery and putting images to everything, but when the words or names are not familiar, it's hard. But I shall continue. Now that's an attitude I like. I shall continue with an exclamation point. Excellent. That's what matters, right? Making the images comes with practice. And then, as we talked about, you're going to need to keep practicing. And one of the cool things about card practice, since that we're on this, is your images can evolve over time. And they should evolve over time. And you can make them better and better. So I just evolved one yesterday. I was doing this, and I've always had a dish for 6 of spades. And, it's always been sort of problematic. I got to think of a specific dish. And then I thought, come on, I can push a little bit harder here. I can make this better than a dish. And it is a dish from a cartoon. It is specific, but it's still not specific enough, right? Because there's a lot of dishes that come to life in this cartoon. So then I just pushed a little bit, and I knew that I needed to deal with this, because it's not that it doesn't work, it's just it can be better, which means it's faster, which means it's more fun. So then I thought, finally, I came up with something. Dashiell Hammett, right? Still follows the major, and it is much more specific. Plus, I've read a book by Dashiell Hammett, and you can look up pictures of him and see him, and do a little more reading, get more familiar, build up the memory reserve around Dashiell Hammett. Now this thing flies a lot faster through the fingers of the mind and memory. Really good. So it's wonderful to be on the journey, always improving, always optimizing through practice. Pablo says, hi Anthony, I just finished encoding for the first time all the cards in a deck. Each suit has its own memory palace. How do you remember a long sequence? Okay, say more. Do you change the palaces or use the images in a new memory palace? I'm not sure what you're doing. Each suit is in a memory palace. That's not how I would proceed. For beginner stage, I would have a quarter of the deck in an individual memory palace, but then you want to move to having half a deck in an individual memory palace, and so forth, until you can do a whole deck in one memory palace. You just want to advance your skill levels. But I'm not sure what you mean exactly by having each suit in an individual memory palace. To hear more about that. Not necessarily wrong or anything like that, but I can't quite conceive of that as being a strategy, so I'm not sure what it is that you've done. Say more in the chat, please. I'll look forward to more details. Anyway, the thing about frustrating images is you just practice making images, and your frustration will go down, but then you don't want it to become so easy that you aren't challenged anymore. That's really important. Okay, so let's see what else we got in mailbag. Do a couple more, and unless you guys keep me busy with some comments and questions, we'll call it a day. Call it a morning. It's a beautiful morning here in Brisbane. How is the weather where you are? Let me know in the chat if whether small chat is worthy of your finger power. I'd love to know. I would love to know. Let's see, what else do we got here? we have, okay, that's private student stuff. Bad Boss says, that's crazy. My imagery for six of spade is a plate. When you said dish, I had to think for a minute and realized my original term was dish. Over time, I had plate in mind and forgot dish. Yeah, those problems can happen. And that's why you want to just work over time to make sure that you evolve them to be more and more specific. So here's another example. I used to just have a lion. Then I had the MGM lion. And then you know what? The MGM lion just isn't specific enough, right? Because I don't know his name. There's different MGM lions in different periods of film history, yada, yada, yada. So then I finally thought, what is the lion that I've spent the most time with? Well, it turns out his name is it Aslan? Aslan, I think, from The Lion, the Witch. Oh man, I can't even think of the title of the book. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Is that what it's called? It feels like there's something missing from that title. Anyway, that's the odd thing about memory, right? Is you'll think, is it Aslan or whatever? But the whole point is that we're going to make it more specific over time. And who have you spent the most time with? That's a great question to ask. Even if you can't remember the details, like the title of the book or whatever. If you can just remember that that lion is very specific, maybe, you know, like how many books is this lion in? He's in so many, so many. I want to look up this title now and see if it is actually Aslan. I love memory. Memory is such a puzzling thing, how you can remember something so good and things related to it can be quite weak. So yeah, it's Aslan, main character in the Chronicles of Narnia, and it's the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Okay, so, you know, guys, in my work, I'm always second guessing myself because it is one of those things where trial by fire. But yeah, that's another one that I made more specific over time, and it really helps. It really helps to always be evolving them. You can change them outright. You can have more than one image per card, actually. So I'll give you an example of that. I might not even, yeah, here she is. So the Queen of Clubs is chain, but a very specific chain. You know that movie Hellraiser, all those chains? So it's the Hellraiser chains, but it's also Fat Bastard from the Austin Powers movies. Why? Because of the double chins, right? And so I like to have that suitability. I like to have that, I like it to be two characters. And not everyone has two characters, but I like this one to have two characters. Really, really helps. And that's partly because of where it is in the number sequence. It's hard to find a real good word, but I like that word and it works. Pablo says, what I did was create 4 memory palaces, each one with 13 places for each card suit. Now I have all the cards memorized. Now when I need to memorize a random secret, I burn the images. Okay, well, burning the images, that is a strategy. It's used a lot in poker, poker memorization. But Pablo continues, perhaps it would be better to get the images in a new palace for that specific sequence. Yeah, I would do it. I never used a memory palace to make my original images. I just used the cards themselves. So when I was first doing it, it was like each card had a number, and so it must be 41 because it's rat, right? So that's how that works. And it's just that simple. I didn't need a memory palace for that. See, anytime that the actual object is already the memory palace, you don't necessarily need a memory palace. It's like when you're reading books and you only want to memorize a couple of facts from books. Well, each page is already a memory palace. Especially if you have a 00 to 99, because every page already has a figure that you can associate 1 or 2 facts with, which is why you can say things like, oh yes, it was on page 72 that X and X happened, right? So whenever the actual object gives you some characteristic of a fast, quick, and easy memory palace, nothing wrong with what you did. It's great. It's a genius solution if that's what worked for you, but it's not strictly necessary. There are many things that have spatial location already built into them, such as decks of cards and books. So, but that's not mass information. So basically, Pablo, what I would suggest is that you now, when you want to memorize, when you're practicing, have 1 or 2 memory palaces where you encode the cards. Start small. Start with maybe a quarter of a deck, work up to half, work up to 3/4, work up to whole in single memory palaces. And you know, you can just make memory palaces up I used to do a lot of card memorization in cafes because I was practicing memorizing with noise around, right? And so I'd go and then I'd actually try and make it noisier by listening to Slayer. I love to listen to Slayer while memorizing to put on an extra level of difficulty, and then just look out the window and use the street as a memory palace. There's lots you can do. Use your imagination. You'll find there are endless exercises. Andy, thanks for confirming. I got it right. Aslan is the lion from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Sandra says, dusk here in Northern California. After a series of rain fronts, my freshly green yard is bathed in sunshine. Thank you for the effort you make to present these programs. You're welcome, Sandra, and maybe that rain was part of your internet connection. I know here when the weather is particularly crazy, then things will go nuts with the internet. So I'm glad you could be here. I appreciate it. I appreciate your interaction very, very much. And it's always wonderful to meet with you all. Pablo says, awesome, thank you. Thank you, Pablo. I really love that you're doing this and you're sharing it with us, letting us peer inside your practice. And if the things that we say can help, all the better, all the merrier. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, everybody. Well, if there's nothing else, all right, we got one more here. This is from Noor, who says, Arabic language and to teach memory techniques to others. This is my biggest dream yet. And I never think I could make it because basically I have real problems with memorizing and I have ADHD. But your techniques are really helpful. Please continue sharing your lessons. Thank you so much. All right, well, ADHD we know can't possibly be a barrier for all people because my good friend Jonathan Levy identifies or has in the past with this. And we have a podcast interview with him. Actually, I just put together a video with my team to help promote people listening to that interview who may have missed it in the past. So much gold in the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. Thanks to the wonderful guests who are on it. Thanks to all your questions. Many, many things to answer. Got a lifetime of work yet to go. And I appreciate everybody who continues to download those episodes, listen to them, send me questions, and engage with the blog and everything we do here. So, yeah, we do have barriers in life. I've got barriers too. I've got all kinds of problems. Chronic pain. I used to really think I had manic depression, not so sure anymore. Brain fog. Oh, everybody's got every excuse under the sun. The question is, what are you going to do to look that beast in the eye, define the problem better, establish the solutions, establish the path, show up for it, sip at it, right? Study, implement, and practice across the board. Exercise and practice. Like, it's just practice, practice. Life is practice. The things that come to us, we don't have to mystify it. We don't have to get too woo-woo or out in space, but a metaphor for life is that life is about solving the problems that life sends us, showing up to them in our best possible way. One of the best possible ways to show up properly is to go deep, like we talked about today. Pablo asks, have you ever tried tarot cards or palmistry for palaces? No, but you can use the hand as a memory palace. For sure, or better said, a station in a memory palace. Tarot cards I've used in my magic routines. There's one trick in particular that works. Actually, there's two tricks in particular that work really well, specifically with tarot. But, and I know cold reading, so I can do a tarot reading routine that's fairly convincing, provided that I've picked the right victim, so to speak. Gullibility is rarer these days than it used to be, thank goodness. But I don't really do that stuff that much anymore. I don't have a chance to perform magic as much, and that's because I don't define the opportunities that establish the scenarios in which I would do more magic. Much more excited and enthusiastic about memory and all the things that it can do for people, and talking to them about it so that they can do it, feel motivated towards it, and just keeping this project rolling and growing and reaching as many people as we can while we're here to do it. That's basically that. All right. Tommy Doolf says, if I use my home as a memory palace and construct it in order to learn 1,000 words, can I then use the same memory palace, which is my home in this case, to memorize programming concepts or any other subject? Well, first I would just say one home for 1,000 words can be done, but it's not the best possible strategy, and you won't learn the most out of what spatial memory can do for you by defining that as a goal. But yeah, you can technically do it. And yeah, you can technically use the same memory palace for programming concepts. You want some differentiation and distinction between the terms, but I think there's a better strategy possible for you. We'll be talking about it on the upcoming webinar if you haven't registered. magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. The link for that should be visible for you. You can click it and get registered. And yeah, what can I say? It's been a great session. Really appreciated being with everybody. And great questions. Upcoming are some updates on the book that I'm working on. I want to check in with everybody, make sure the outline is on task. But I'm doing what I preach here by really defining this book before I establish the chapters that are going to be in it with great detail, and then set up how I'm going to exercise the mental capacities and knowledge that I have to put it into actual words, and then practice the editing of it, and then getting it out there in the way that seems the best to do it. And that's just a process. But I really appreciate, again, everybody who was on that previous live. Had such a great time. Had such a great time this time as well, and got more ideas for what needs to be in this book. If you somehow are not subscribed to this YouTube channel, make sure you click to be subscribed down below. And if you're interested in being more of a participant in this book, also let me know by email. And we're going to have, this is going to be, I hope, really a very special book because of it being what I think is probably the first crowdsourced book in terms of its content for memory improvement, memory techniques, memory training, and all that. And the only risk that I can see is that it's going to be 1,000 pages long, because there's so many great questions that everybody has asked and points that they wanted covered and so forth. But also I think it could possibly be quite concise. We'll see. So just to review for everybody, go deep, define what memory power means for you, put it in words, get it out of your head, have it in front of you so you can see it, and then you'll think about it differently, and you'll see opportunities to make a better definition because you've gotten it out of your head. If you don't get things out of your head, they just aren't the same as outside of your head to refine and so forth. Then establish what's going to get you there to that outcome that you've defined better, and even define the established practice that's going to take you there, and then know that you need to exercise the techniques by doing them. You get the exercise from doing, and then just practice deliberately. Deliberate practice is very, very important. That means setting aside time, being consistent about that time, and really, really making sure that you're using the techniques at the highest possible level in a dedicated manner so you get the results that you're looking for. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Had a great time. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed holding it for you. And if you're watching this replay, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you let me know in the discussion, mnemonics.com. Take care of yourself and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.